What if everything you believe to be real is just an illusion? Since birth, we are taught to see the world in a specific way. We learn that there is a clear line between the self and what is out there. We identify ourselves with our name, our history, our thoughts. We believe that we are this voice inside our head, this isolated entity navigating a separate universe. But what if all of this was nothing more than a big misunderstanding? Alan Watts, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, dedicated his life to questioning this perception. For him, the separation between the individual and the world is just a trick of the mind, an illusion that traps us within a limited view of reality. We are not spectators of existence, but an inseparable part of it. Like a wave that believes itself to be independent of the ocean, we forget that we are, in fact, the very expression of the whole. And the most curious thing? This mistake does not happen by chance. Since childhood, we are conditioned to believe in a solid self, in an external world to be conquered and controlled. We create goals, strive to achieve ideals, worry about the future, always in search of something that seems to be one step ahead. But this constant search hides an uncomfortable secret. No matter how hard we chase happiness, it never seems to last. If you have ever felt that there is something wrong with this endless race, that there is a missing piece in this puzzle, know that you are not alone. Because maybe the answer is not in running faster, but in stopping and seeing beyond the illusion. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself who you really are? From an early age, we are taught that we are a name, an identity, a story. We are told that we are a unique individual, separate from the rest of the world. But this idea of self is not something we choose, it is given to us. It is shaped by culture, language, parents, schools. And without question, we come to believe that this limited identity is all we are. But Alan Watts invites us to look beyond this veil. He suggests that this sense of separation is just a trick of thought, a product of the mind that fragments reality into distinct pieces. The self and the other, the inside and the outside. But what if this division were illusory? What if the boundary between you and the world were as artificial as a line drawn in water? After all, where does your body end and the universe begin? Your skin is not a barrier, but a point of connection. Your body does not function in isolation. It breathes air, feeds on the sun, drinks rainwater. You are not separate from the world. You are the world, just as a leaf is part of a tree, and a tree is part of the forest. The problem is that when we believe in the illusion of self, we feel disconnected. We spend our lives trying to fill a void that shouldn't be there. We become insecure, anxious, always searching for something that will make us feel complete. But this search is based on a false premise. You don't need to become anything, because you have never stopped being part of the whole. So the question is not who you are. The question is, can you see that you have never been separate? Have you ever noticed how we're always chasing something? Happiness, success, money, recognition. It seems like there's always a promise of fulfillment just around the corner, telling us that once we achieve it, we'll finally be happy. But there's a problem. Once we get what we wanted, the relief is fleeting. Soon, a new desire arises, and the cycle begins again. Alan Watts describes this relentless pursuit as a game that never ends. We live as if life were a plan of goals to be achieved. First the diploma, then the job, then marriage, owning a house, then retirement. But in the end, what happens? Often, we realize that we were so focused on the next step that we never truly enjoyed the present. It's like a carrot tied to the horse's nose, always within sight, but never within reach. This is the mind's great trick, making us believe that happiness is just ahead, never here and now. But Watts invites us to look at this game from a different perspective. What if, instead of relentlessly seeking something that would complete us, we learn to realize that we are already complete. What if excessive desire were actually a distraction that prevents us from seeing the beauty of the present moment? This doesn't mean that we should abandon our ambitions or stop dreaming. The problem isn't desire itself, but attachment to it, the idea that our happiness depends on something external. When we understand this, we begin to play a different game, one where the present stops being an obstacle and becomes the prize itself. Because, in the end, happiness isn't in the next achievement. It's right where you are right now. Have you ever tried to hold water in your hands? The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Life works the same way. We spend our days trying to plan, predict, and control every detail, as if we had the power to shape the future to our will. But the truth is that existence is unpredictable, chaotic, and uncontrollable. Yet we persist in this illusion, as if the simple act of wanting to do so were enough to tame the flow of reality. Alan Watts invites us to question this obsession with control. He compares life to a river. You can swim against the current, fighting with all your might, or you can surrender to the flow, allowing the water to carry you. The first option is exhausting. The second, liberating. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that giving in is weakness, that not having all the answers is a sign of failure. From a young age, we are taught that we must chart a safe path, anticipate risks, and ensure a stable future. But what if stability is just a comforting illusion? Reality is always beyond our control. Relationships end. Opportunities arise and disappear. Plans fail. And paradoxically, the more we try to hold on to the reins, the more we fear, because deep down, we know we don't have the control we'd like to have. But there is another way. Instead of resisting uncertainty, we can embrace it. Instead of fearing it, we can trust it. As Watts said, the only way to make sense of change is to embrace it, move with it, and join in the dance. When we stop fighting the unpredictable, we find something that has always been there, the freedom to simply be. Imagine that you are dreaming. In this dream, everything seems real, the places, the people, the emotions. But then, suddenly, you wake up, and you realize that everything that seems solid and true was just an illusion. Alan Watts invites us to consider, what if our waking life is no different from this dream? What if we are living in a state of deep sleep, deluded by concepts and beliefs that prevent us from seeing reality as it really is? From childhood, we are taught to see ourselves as individuals separate from the world. We believe that we are an independent self, distinct from everything around us. But Watts challenges us to question this idea. He reminds us that a wave in the ocean may think it is a separate entity, but ultimately it is the ocean. Awakening, according to Watts, is not a mystical or supernatural event. It is simply seeing the truth. There is no separation between you and the universe. You are not an outside observer of life, trying to control or understand it. You are life itself. But if that's true, why do we feel so disconnected? Because we've grown up in a system that teaches us to seek meaning in labels, achievements, and artificial identities. We see ourselves as isolated pieces of a puzzle, when in fact we've always been the puzzle itself. Waking up doesn't mean rejecting the world or turning away from reality. On the contrary, it means finally living it fully, without the filters of fear, comparison, and control. It means stopping trying to find yourself and simply accepting that you are already, and always have been, part of this eternal flow called existence. And when we realize this, something changes. The weight of separation disappears. The anguish of being someone gives way to the lightness of simply being. What happens when you hold a handful of sand tightly? It slips through your fingers. But if you relax your hand, the sand stays there, gently resting in your palm. Life works the same way. We spend most of our time trying to control everything: our relationships, our future, our emotions. But the more we cling to certainties, the more we suffer. Alan Watts teaches us that the secret to living fully is not control, but letting go. And letting go does not mean being indifferent or not caring. On the contrary, it means deeply accepting the transitory nature of life and learning to flow with it. Look at a river. It does not try to hold back the water that has already passed, nor does it worry about the water that is yet to come. It simply flows, without resistance. And in that flow, it finds its true nature. We, on the other hand, are constantly fighting against the current. We want things to be different, for people to act according to our expectations, for life to give us guarantees. But all of this is an illusion. The only certainty we have is that everything changes, and freedom comes when we learn to embrace that change rather than resist it. Letting go frees us from fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of the unknown. It teaches us to trust that when we let go of what we can't hold on to, we make room for something new and unexpected to blossom. Does this mean we should abandon our dreams or stop caring about life? No. It means we should live it fully, but without the need for control. To love without possession, to desire without obsession, to walk without anxiety toward destiny. Because, in the end, the beauty of life lies precisely in the uncertainty, in the mystery of what will come, in the constant flow of existence. Imagine you're dreaming. Inside the dream, everything seems real: the time, the worries, the desires, the fears. But then, suddenly, you wake up, and you realize that it was all just an illusion. Alan Watts invites us to a similar awakening, not from a literal dream, but from the dream of separation, control, and attachment. He reminds us that we spend our lives trying to hold on to something that was never ours to hold, that we struggle against the current of time, not realizing that we were always part of the flow itself. And then the big question arises: what happens when we stop fighting? The answer is liberating. When we let go of the need for control, we find peace. When we stop seeking happiness in the future, we discover the joy of the now. When we realize that we are not separate from the universe, we finally feel like we belong there. This doesn't mean that challenges disappear, but it does mean that we are no longer prisoners of the illusion that we need to fix everything before we can live fully. Reality doesn't need to be controlled. It just needs to be experienced. What Alan Watts teaches us is not a theory that is too far-fetched or philosophical to apply. It is a reminder of something that, deep down, we already know. Life is an incredible spectacle, and our only task is to participate in it, not as mere spectators, but as an inseparable part of the dance. Now that you've come this far, the question remains: are you ready to let go? If this video resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel. This journey is just beginning.